Since ChatGPT became the biggest buzzword a couple of years back, I've been getting asked questions about AI. Will it replace bookkeeping, or how can you use it in your business? So at first, candidly, I was not ready to answer that question. I had not dabbled with ChatGPT when I started getting asked that question. At the time, I did have an established bookkeeping business that was giving me lifestyle freedom and clients and team members that I was working with. I would say I started using it probably in the last 2 years, and I used it extensively in 2025, both in my business and in my personal life. And now I'm ready to finally have the conversation about AI and how I use it and what I see for the future with bookkeeping. So we have a lot of ground to cover today, and I do have some notes so that I can keep on task and make sure that I hit all of the hot topics without getting too deep into storytelling. But I am going to start with a little bit of storytelling and a little bit of honesty and caution. For me, the AI that I use predominantly is ChatGPT. There are several out there. I hear different things, but my experience has been with ChatGPT. At first, I started using it very practically, starting to dabble with tasks, asking it questions, and then once I engaged with it, and could see the things that it was doing, I think it was almost like a science experiment to see what else it would do. This year, in all of 2025, I used it for my personal life. Things like taking screenshots of conversations and asking, am I reading this right? Is there a little bit of nuance here? What are the undertones of this message? And practical things like, help me respond to this, or help me be more concise, and looking things up. I I don't want to dive too deep into this exact conversation, but I had a lot of property issues with a property that I run in North Carolina, and a little bit of like legal issues. And I started using it deeply to strategize and figure out how I could learn enough about that and then how to respond to it to achieve the goal and not continue to create chaos. But this situation, which is largely resolved now, thank God, this situation took up a lot of mental headspace and fear for me in 2025. And so I found myself using ChatGPT to, I would at first have called this plan, strategize, learn, educate myself, arm myself. But then I would use it to vent. Like, this is going on. And so now that I've kind of figured out what I need to do and what's happening, here's how I feel about it. And then I would think about fears. If this happens, will that happen? And one thing that I noticed is just the depth that you can go into in a thought spiral, particularly. So just to back things up before I get into that, I want to tell you what we're going to talk about today, the three main themes that we're going to cover. And then I'm going to go back to the thought spirals so that you have context for what I'm warning you against if you haven't done this, and what I am going to keep myself in check for in 2026. The three themes that we're going to talk about today are what AI is and what it's not. And so my story is going to bridge into that in just a second. And then theme two is how I actually use it in my bookkeeping business. That's the most powerful, most beautiful thing that you're going to learn today. And then theme three is what I see for the future with AI and bookkeeping, because that's a big question that I get asked. So back to my thought spirals, because I think that a lot of people can fall into this. And if you haven't already, it could happen if you start using it in this way. So I would like to save you the time, or at least give you awareness to the pattern that you can so easily fall into. For me, it's not my bookkeeping business. I didn't have reason to fear my bookkeeping business by the time AI rolled around. Actually, there is an amazing thing that happened throughout all of the chaos of 2025, which is the bookkeeping business not only sustained and continued to work, but we grew. So it was really a testament for how strong and stable that can be, even despite chaotic periods and periods where other things are uncertain, or where your energy is depleted because of where you get called away from in your business, which can happen for so many different things. It can be health, family relationships, somebody else's health. It could be your partner losing a job. It could be different lifestyle changes. It could be so many different things that can pull your attention away from your business. When you've built it properly, it will continue to run without you. But I bring this to the podcast, and I'm anecdoting on my fear spiral story, because if I had ChatGPT before I started a bookkeeping business, especially if I were thinking about it before taking action, which is not really my story. My story was more the reverse of that, where I found myself growing a bookkeeping business because circumstances brought me there. I wasn't deciding if I should leave a job. I wasn't deciding if this was a viable business. I was taking the steps presented. But my passion lies in helping others on a different path who have to make a decision. Making a decision is so much harder. And I totally understand the things that you would be thinking and your fears and your cautions before starting a bookkeeping business. So this is where these two things integrate, where I talk about using ChatGPT or AI to help you think and plan, and the loops you could fall into because of what AI is. So I mentioned I would fall into late night fear cycles using ChatGPT. And the intention was, I'm going to ask it this question almost impulsively. I do believe that this is probably an ADHD impulse, but I know a lot of us have ADHD traits, whether they're diagnosed or not. And so my midnight brain is starting to cycle, and instead of shutting it down, I'm totally engaging it. Because years ago, you would need to find a friend willing to engage in that thought spiral with you, who would be awake at this time, or that you would be willing to bother, and you would have less access to doom type thinking. And so you come at it with a productive lens, but then you ask a question, because our brains are kind of wired to process the day, and something about the nighttime makes the fears arise that might not be there during the day. And now you have a tool that has unlimited stamina for your nonsense, and it does not want to end the conversation. It's not an authority. It has no beliefs. It has no conviction. It has no accountability. It has no human experience. It is pretty good at picking up on nuance, but you have to remember that it is not the authority. But what it's designed to do is keep you engaged, just like anything. Anything that you open up your phone or your computer or an app, the purpose is to keep you there longer. So you'll notice if you're using ChatGPT to ask it any question, if you were to go, and I almost should do this right now, but I would want to be in an incognito browser because it knows too much about me. My question would be like, is bookkeeping a good business to start? And it would give you a lot of answers. It would probably tell you yes, because of the way that you phrased that. So I almost should try this in real life. Is bookkeeping a good business to start? And it would likely dump out some reasons why the answer is yes, and highlight some of the things that are good about bookkeeping. And then at the end, it's going to prompt you with something else that it can do to help you to take this conversation further. And my point in saying that is that AI is designed, when you're brainstorming, to never end the conversation. A human would have an interest in eventually moving on with their day, doing something else, feeding their family, or going to bed. AI will keep you there for an eternity. So if you are brainstorming, or it's productive, or it's good, that can be helpful. But if you're going to chat, asking it about a fear that you have, it's going to keep you there and keep going with this conversation. It's going to take you deeper and deeper and deeper and prompt you with things you didn't quite think about. And you'll end up there for a long time. And if you're like me, this can run until 3 a.m. And then eventually you're like, all right, I've got to wake up at 7. Let me get 4 hours of sleep. And that's not really going to fuel your next day. So I definitely found myself in those loops on personal things, but I caution you against doing it in your bookkeeping business, reminding yourself of what the purpose is for this computer and how you should be using it. So I caution you against the fear spiraling, and I want to bring awareness to its goal, which is to keep you there forever. Another thing that I've noticed, a bad trait of AI, a negative thing, is that if you're using it, so one of the things that I use it for personally and in my business is when you're like drafting an email or a letter. It's mostly the written word that I struggle with. It's so much harder to convey your point, and you want to make sure that you're not inflaming or being rude, or you want to be concise and convicted in your response. So you can take that and you can run it through chat, and then it'll tell you, like, it'll either rewrite it for you, which is, I don't love when it does that. So now I give it like tighter guardrails on how to handle revisions. I mostly want it to find punctuation errors or a place where I can make things more concise. And I'm curious if it has a way to tighten or improve that, but I will now tell me what I should improve on this or something like that. I mean, I would have a different type of a prompt. And then it will give you a revision, and you could literally copy and paste that revision right into, I'll usually have up something in notes or something. And so I'll revise that one piece, I'll put it in notes, and then I'll copy and paste it back to ChatGPT. And it could tell you, this is great, just change this one thing. Then you change that one thing. And I don't know why I do this actually. It exposed for me a lot of my weaknesses or patterns. Like, why am I asking the computer to then give me an A plus? I do think that I was looking for validation sometimes, which is funny because I was doing this not consciously, but then I wanted it to tell me it was perfect and it was done and it was ready to send. So I would copy it, paste it in there, and then it would tweak it again. It would say, everything's good except for this one piece. And if you spend enough time tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, and I've been known to probably do 100 revisions on some things, it'll go, and eventually it'll start correcting parts where you literally copied that sentence from chat. So then, me being who I am, I would be like, but you told me to say that. And it'll say, oh yes, and you can do it this way, or you can do it that way. And either one is fine. But like, the point that I'm getting at here is that it is a perfectionist's worst nightmare, because ChatGPT will never, ever tell you that anything is perfect, ever. Unless you say, is this perfect? But even still, because sometimes I've asked it to grade things. So I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this? It might give it a 9.8, but it's very rare that it will give it a 10 out of 10. So it can keep you stuck in fear loops, and it can keep you stuck in perfectionism with no end and unlimited stamina. So I caution you against those couple of uses for it. So now I'm looking back at my notes to make sure, because I riffed on that a lot, because I really want you to connect the dots of, it can be a powerful tool and it can be great for brainstorming. It can be nice when you really want to vent or process without exhausting friends or family. And I'll still use it like that, but with a greater awareness of what it's designed to do and why it's coming at you in a certain way. And I did say that the wording is going to matter, right? So if you said, is bookkeeping a good business to start? It is essentially reading into your question and what it thinks you want it to say, because it's a massive people pleaser. So it's trying to give you what you want to hear, as well as give you context, but boost your thought process. So it's really not impartial. And that's just something to be aware of. So if you were to start another thread and ask chat, is bookkeeping a bad business to start? It would probably mirror more of why it's not. So that's just something to pay attention to. Again, it's trying to read you and please you and keep you there. That's the goal. So a couple of notes that I had on AI, I already said it's not an authority, no beliefs, no conviction, no accountability. And it doesn't know, it predicts. The word for AI is hallucinating. So sometimes it will literally make stuff up out of thin air. And it can be kind of funny. And sometimes you want an ego boost. And if you want an ego boost, go to ChatGPT and ask it for it, and it will boost you all the way up. It's funny, but you just have to take that discretion of asking, like, is this something that I can trust in this realm? And so you should not be outsourcing your authority or your power or your leadership or your beliefs or your convictions to ChatGPT. You should be the leader and use chat as a tool instead. So remember, who is the authority? You. And who is the tool? Chat. That is the best way that you can use chat without getting yourself into a doomsday or a negative loop. Okay. So it hallucinates confidently. The analogy that I like to give to this that is kind of fun, and you'll start to notice it if you play with it more, is it's almost like that annoying girl from high school who, it didn't matter what it was, she was the expert on it. And somebody would mention like cars, and it would be like, oh yeah, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And you can tell that she's literally talking out of her behind, but she's still going to confidently BS the room. That is what ChatGPT will do. If you ask it for something, it's going to make something up to give you an answer that sounds good. And so never ever use it as authority, especially if you're trying to do something where the facts matter. And this isn't just brainstorming. If you want to fact check, you've got to double check that. Okay. So you should be coming with the source, with the beliefs, and with tasking it. That's the most efficient way to use it. If you don't know what you're doing, then you won't know when it's wrong. So you can't trust it explicitly at all. It is not to be trusted in that way, but it is a powerful tool. So you can't outsource your leadership. you can't outsource your leadership to anybody, but definitely not ChatGPT. I did an episode in season 1, probably near the end. If you look, I think I talk about how to handle, like, a hard conversation on how to handle a lack of spousal support when you're growing your bookkeeping business, because that's something that I see so often in applications for Babs or Libby or my DMs. Is I really want to start this, but I don't have the support of my husband. And essentially, you should go and listen to that episode. But the too long didn't listen, or the recap for this one, if you're just coming in, is most of the time what your spouse is doing is simply mirroring your fears and your insecurities. So if you're coming at it by saying, hey, Joe, I'm thinking of starting a bookkeeping business, but I don't know, I'm kind of scared. He's really just going to say, oh yeah, I don't know about that, because you're coming in that energy. And it's just a low effort, normal human response to someone else's deep thoughts. These are your deep thoughts. So how you position and how you frame that is going to largely influence what you receive back. And chat is just like this. So if you come at it with fears and doubts, it's going to amplify those. Mirror them and amplify them. I think that's might be the difference between what you get with humans and what you get with AI. Although people can amplify your fears, especially the closer they are to you, because they want to keep you safe. ChatGPT is going to amplify it just because it's a computer that is giving you what you're asking. And if you're asking it to tell you to fear something, it's going to amplify that. So it's going to mirror back what you presented, and then it's going to amplify it. So be cautious not to outsource your leadership to anyone, but especially not AI. And so there's danger in outsourcing your power, in using AI to ask it what to believe and if you should be afraid, and letting it define your next movement instead of looking towards a person who's done it before, or yourself, or the resources that you need to move you closer to your dreams. Okay, so that is a caution. It should never be your source of belief or inspiration or decision making. It should be a tool in the process. And if you want to play with it, you can, but just do it with caution. Okay. So now we can move on to theme 2, which is how I actually use AI in my business. And I'm thinking about strongly considering, and will likely do it based off of feedback that I expect to receive, which is, would you like to do a live workshop style AI boot camp for bookkeepers, where we will get into exactly how to execute and positive ways to use AI as a tool in your business to increase efficiency with you as the leader? If so, find me however you're listening to this, whether it's on the podcast or on Instagram. Let me know that you're interested in that. If you're receiving emails, then reply back and say, I would love to participate in an AI workshop, and I will create it. I am best with being prompted and asked, and then I'll execute it for you. I think it would be great. So I want to get into how to tactically use this, but from a conceptual basis, I will explain the best ways that I use it, especially through my bookkeeping business. So it's best at execution, not taking direction or leadership. So it's really good at repetitive tasks and compressing time and giving you output from clean inputs, clean and clear inputs. So you decide and AI assists. It has really helped us with some of our repetitive tasks and making things consistent, which is really nice. A few of the ways that I use it in bookkeeping is to tighten language that I've already written. If I have to have a hard conversation with a client, especially if I'm feeling emotionally charged, because sometimes I do get that way because we're human, but I think I'm pretty good at recognizing when I am feeling emotional and I want to make sure that I'm responding in a clear way and in my power. So I will draft what I want to say, and then I'll ask chat to tighten it up. So how can I make this more clear, concise, less apologetic, more directive, but still kind and considerate? And then it can help me with brainstorming so that I can say something in the best way that you can put something in text. There are several different ideas and ways that I can think about that. It could be from price increases. It could be in clarifying scope. It could be in answering a tough question because maybe your client's asking you to do something or answer a question in a way where you can tell that they want you to tell them that it's okay to do something that it's not really okay to do. I'm thinking like tax related deductions. You may want to say no, but you want to say it in a way that's understanding. So chat can help you with client communication best when you have drafted your thoughts and you have the stance, and it's just helping you convey that in a more clean way. It's really good for that. And again, it can help with removing the apologetic wording. Another thing that we use it for is compiling our recap emails. So every month when we send our clients reports, we give a recap email that summarizes their reports, and we have totally streamlined this with the use of ChatGPT. So that really helps us stay consistent, frameworked, and accurate, and allows us to take out some menial tasks. It also helps us compile math, but you've got to be careful with it. Math is shockingly not one of its strong suits. So you want to be really clear on what the inputs and outputs are and then check it. But it can help with some data compilation for sure. And it can also help with organizing data and summaries. So again, the important distinction here is you draft or you set the parameters and then AI refines. It's not the lead. But it can really help with condensing time and making you more efficient and giving you that same standard way of giving information. To use it safely, you want to give it a role, you want to give it constraints, so you're telling it exactly how to perform. And then you want to give it context. That's really important, actually. Especially if I'm doing client communication, I will usually use my voice to say, this is a client of 5 years. They're asking for this. I'm feeling this. I think that they're feeling that. Here's what I want to say, but I want to convey it in this way. And sometimes you also need to tell chat that what you're telling it is for context for it to frame it and not to put it in. Because sometimes I'll say the context is, I don't feel comfortable with this, so I want to say this. And then it'll put in the output for the client, I don't feel comfortable with this. And I'm like, no, I said that just for you to understand. So you'll get pretty good at how you can train AI. And actually through the use of it this way over the last year, I realized where sometimes I was asking it to do something that I thought was pretty simple, but I didn't give it enough information. And because it's so robotic, I would expect a person to maybe understand what I was saying, but not a robot. So I think it helped me hone in my explanations also. And I use that with humans because I'm like, if the robot can't understand this, then a human will probably struggle with this too. So it helped me clarify the way that I ask people to do things and the way that I give them context and direction also. So now we can move on to the third theme, which is the future of bookkeeping and AI. Is it going to replace us as bookkeepers? Am I afraid of AI? And the truth is, I'm not. I do fear AI in a lot of ways. I don't love its existence in the world, even though it's something that I use. I'm catching myself using it. And so I wouldn't say that I think AI is the greatest thing that ever happened. I would probably prefer, if I had a vote, to go back 5 years and rewind some of this right now. I don't know that I'll feel that way forever, but I think the truth is change is hard and change is scary. And this is a huge revolution in the world, the way that everything is done. And with change comes fear and uncertainty, right? And so I understand why people fear AI, but I think one of the things that I would boil this down to is if you think that AI is going to replace you as a bookkeeper, there's probably two things that you're not super familiar with: AI and bookkeeping. If you had a lot of context in working with real clients and what bookkeeping really looks like and what your job really is, and you really used AI to see the mistakes that it makes and how dangerous it can be if it doesn't have somebody checking it, like a supervisor essentially. And that supervisor needs to be well trained and educated and ethical, and that's you. That's the idea. That's you supervising it. Then it would make a ton of mistakes, a ton. And you have to think AI is just like a formula. It's just on a grander scale, and it's a complex formula, but it's input in equals input out. This is the same for bookkeeping too. What you put in is going to dictate what you get out. And so what you put in has to be intelligent, and what you put out, you have to be able to review. So if you think that a business owner can come to AI and have it take over bookkeeping, you probably haven't worked with a lot of business owners before, because having 50 active clients and many over the years and having conversations and trainings with hundreds of people that didn't become done for you clients, I can tell you that I would say 9 out of 10, if not more, business owners come in and have no clue how to manage their flow of money, never mind their bookkeeping. The flow of money is so much simpler than bookkeeping and taxes, and yet we have people commonly coming in and messing up the flow of money, which is the input that dictates the output of bookkeeping. And our job as bookkeepers is to come in to see how they're doing things. It is almost never proactive. It is almost always reactive, to the tune of a year or more, I would say, that people have been operating their business in a less than ideal way, having a mess on their hands. That range of how messy this is varies depending on the complexity of their business, but it's always something that needs untangling, rewiring, and adjusting so that you can correct the inputs to correct the outputs. And humans are going to continue to run businesses, and humans are going to continue to make messes. And it's going to be us as the bookkeepers that need to untangle this and correct it and move with that system going forward. Also, bookkeeping and a whole lot of other things, you really need accuracy. You can't have good enough. So even if AI could get you 80% of the way there, that 20% that it would mess up would be so substantial. We're just light years away from that. And I don't actually think that we'll ever get there, because I think one of the biggest things that we end up doing as bookkeepers is helping our clients on an emotional level to both be brave enough to face this side of their business, to be brave enough to ask for help, to be willing enough to change their structures, and then to have someone else come in and oversee it so that it's actually done correctly. So I think we are eons and light years away from it ever replacing us as the human that comes in and works with the human who is fearful of their numbers and making mistakes so that we can fix the upfront system to correct the output. So the reason that I talk about input and output is not just for bookkeeping, which is what I just covered in depth, but also to think that even if a bookkeeper had the intention to come to ChatGPT and figure it out, they would need to know what to ask in order to get there, and they won't know that. So what they would do instead is actually what I cautioned you against. And they would come to ChatGPT and they would try to figure out their books, and it would seem simple, and then they would start getting into it, and they would get deeper and deeper and deeper into not knowing what to do and getting overwhelmed to the point where they don't do anything, or maybe they finally decide this is too complicated and I'm calling somebody and it will be you. Referring back to my notes on that, humans will always be the problem and the need. The humans are going to start the bookkeeping business, make the mistakes, avoid their numbers, and they need the interpretation, correction, and guidance which you can bring. AI can't undo the chaos that it didn't create. That's too human and too nuanced. And then what I think AI is going to do for bookkeepers is it's going to widen the gap. It's not going to eliminate opportunity, because there's tons of opportunity. What it's going to do is it's going to set those apart, those who are desiring to break free and start the business. And then for those who are going to do this with knowledge, education, and ethics and efficiency and all of the good things that you actually need to be a bookkeeper, it's going to be the meaningful tool that helps expedite repeatable tasks, and those bookkeepers will remain the leader. And so they'll just be able to gain efficiencies. But it's going to take those who are afraid to start, or who have started but really doubt themselves, and it's going to get those people stuck in inaction or fear loops, and it's going to keep them out of the market, which is ultimately a good thing, I suppose. You just have to decide which one you want to be. What I would hate to see is for AI to fear monger you into not getting started, into mirroring and amplifying back your fears, to stop you from taking the necessary actions that will get you closer to your dreams by closing in your skills and knowledge gaps so that you can actually step into leadership. That's where I see the gap widening. So those who are willing to take action and do it strategically, they're going to end up here. And those who are just starting and fearing are going to stay stuck if they're not cautious of how they're using it. So you have to decide which side of this you want to be on. So essentially AI doesn't eliminate opportunity. It exposes who is never going to take action anyway. And those that are going to be permeable to allow that fear to stop them, it's probably likely that you shouldn't be doing that anyway. But you get the choice to decide which one you're going to be. So just choose. And honestly, it is okay. if you don't want to start a bookkeeping business. But I think if you want to change your life, if you don't have another next thought that is the right thing that you should take action on, then I want you to sit with cautiously for a while until it becomes clear, where do you want to be? Where are you now? And what actions do you need to take to get yourself to where you want to be in a safe and sustainable way? And what is the cost of action and what is the cost of inaction? So you might want to rewind and listen to those prompts again. Those last couple of prompts, they're really, really, really gold in helping you decide your next step. And I say this a lot, but I just want to remind you that while you may feel late, like you're farther behind than you would like to be, chances are you're still pretty darn young and you have a lot of life left ahead of you. And you can ask yourself, close your eyes and ask yourself, if I take no action, where am I in 5 years? If I take bold action, brave action, if I believe in myself and I back my belief with action and with guidance and with ethics and with skills, where will I be in 5 years? And which one would I prefer to choose? And as I close, what I want to leave you with is my answer, which is, I don't see AI as something to fear. I see it as a tool that rewards people who know what they're doing and exposes people who don't. So let me know if you would like a training on AI. Again, you can email me, you can message me on Instagram. If you're not on my email list, get on. You can go to katieferro.com. That's KATIEFERRO.com/email and subscribe to emails. That's where you'll hear about podcast episodes and any new offers and where you can hit reply and tell me what you'd like to see. Thanks for hanging out. I hope this episode was helpful.